The name I use for that lens in this book is nutritionism.
How did we get there to the place where there actually is a distinction between that which is readily identifiable as food,
Right,
and those things that
these edible food-like substances?
one would argue are not, exactly?
Well, we got there by and large because the food industry can't make money leaving well enough alone. It's very hard to make money selling basic foods, whether it's butter or oatmeal or broccoli. You make money processing food, adding value. Any farmer will tell you the way you make money in the food business is not growing it or even selling commodities. It's adding value in the form of convenience, in the form of health claims, in the form of novelty. And so, you know, although you can't make money selling oatmeal, which I can buy at my supermarket for 79 cents a pound for organic oats, you can make money selling a cereal based on oats. You can make a lot of money. And you make even more if you process that into an edible, into a cereal bar with that fake layer of milk that they put in those bars now for kids to eat in school or on the school bus. That's where the money is. So there is an economic imperative that forces these companies to overcomplicate food. The problem is the more you process food, the less nutritious it usually is. So you either have to, put junk out on the market, or you add back in the nutrients that have been lost. And then you can boast about how healthy this food is. But in fact, it's never going to be any healthier than the whole food that you began with, those oats.
Let's talk about the adding value piece that you just spoke to, because my sense is that increasingly the farm community is trying to reclaim that territory, which is to say there are other ways to add value to
that are very
products.
healthy. Yeah. Well, it's, toward what end are you adding value? I mean, when you take milk and make cheese, as a dairywoman, that's a very different thing than when you take milk and you make milk-like fake substance that goes on a cereal bar. And I think that farmers are learning that they need to recover that piece of adding value to what they're growing. But that's simple processing. That's traditional processing. There's a real difference between turning milk into yogurt or cheese or preserving jam or something like that. The traditional arts of food processing, if you will, and the way that it's done in the way you find it in your supermarket. And I think there's an order of magnitude difference in the health benefits too. I also, though, saw that around this issue of health and food, people were really perplexed, schizophrenic, and that we really did have a national eating disorder. If you stand back a little bit and look at the conversation about food going on in this country, not the conversation about sustainable agriculture, but the conversation about food and health, you will find that it is all, we have stuffed our heads with biochemistry. And that if you think about it, there is no other part of your life where you know so many biochemical terms. And that ordinary people talk about antioxidants and omega-3 fatty acids and omega-6 fatty acids and phytochemicals and resveratrol. It's really kind of weird. You can live in a house or get dressed without understanding, a lot of chemistry. And you should be able to eat without knowing a lot of chemistry also. People ate very well for thousands of years before they knew what an antioxidant was. So why was it that had become the vocabulary? And the more I looked at this question, the more I realized that our way of viewing food, the lens that we were bringing to it, was a big part of our problem, was a big part of our perplexity. And the name I use for that lens in this book is nutritionism. It's not a term I invented. It's a term invented by a sociologist in Australia. And the ideas behind it you will find in the work of other smarter writers than me. But I found it was a very useful term, and I started working with it and trying to figure out how this term was really corrupting our food culture, or this concept, not the term itself. Now, let me define nutritionism for you, and you tell me if it doesn't reflect our kind of common understanding of food. There are several premises. Nutritionism, first, I need to tell you, is not a science. It is, as the ism suggests, an ideology. What ideologies do is that they organize our experience of something, of the world, according to a certain set of assumptions or premises of which we're only dimly aware if at all. Don't need another of in that sentence. I was an editor for many years. So the first premise of nutritionism, and I'm going to just give you 4, is that the key unit in understanding food is, as the name suggests, the nutrient. That what you need to know about a food to understand its impact on your health, its value or its harm, is to know what it consists of. Is it saturated fat? Does it have omega-3s? And that foods are essentially covers for these nutrients, and that they are the sum of their nutrient parts. And that is certainly how the language of food proceeds in this country. We talk more about nutrients. We talk about the fat in our diet, the carbohydrates in our diet, more than we talk about actual foods. This is bizarre. Second premise of nutritionism. If the nutrient is the key unit in food, and nutrients are invisible, who, after all, has ever seen a nutrient, or tasted a nutrient, or smelled a nutrient? Except for, of course, the scientists who see them through their microscopes. If nutrients are invisible, we need experts to tell us how to eat. You can't figure this out on your own because the important thing is invisible to you. You don't know how much is in it. You need someone to count the nutrients for you, tell you whether they're there or not. It's sort of like a religion, where if the important unit is invisible, is spiritual, you need a priesthood to mediate your relationship to the Godhead. We need experts to mediate our relationship to the blessed or the evil nutrients. Now that points up the third point about nutritionism. Like all of the other isms I can think of, it divides the world very neatly into good and evil. It's a Manichaean system. So that at any given moment, there is a satanic nutrient we are trying to drive from the American food supply. The identity of that nutrient changes over time. For a long time, it's been saturated fat. Today, it's the trans fat, evil nutrient. Mark my words, the next evil nutrient we will be endeavoring to drive from the food supply is the omega-6 fatty acids. And there will be products that will boast of their freedom from this evil nutrient within a couple years. On the other side, you have the blessed nutrients. Fiber occupied this role for a long time. Blessed fiber. Just eat enough of that, everything will be fine. You'll live forever. Now, the omega-3 fatty acid, right? The doppelganger of the omega-6. That's our good and evil. I think we're going to focus more and more on that. Vitamins have always been a blessed nutrient. And polyunsaturated fats were, for a long time, the blessed nutrient. So we divide the world into good and evil, and we organize our food experience according to these good and evil nutrients. So that's the third premise. The fourth premise, and this is in a way the most insidious, and the one you probably kind of take for granted, that the whole point of eating is about health. We are either eating to improve our health, or we're eating in such a way as to ruin our health. But the issue is health. And, if you think about it, if you stand back, if you take the Martian's eye view of things, which is really what I try to do in all my writing, but especially when I'm writing about something as everyday and common as food, this is a strange idea. Yes, of course, you need to eat to be healthy. You need to eat to be alive. But if you think about it, travel around the world, read history, you learn that people have eaten for a great many other reasons. They've eaten for pleasure. How radical. They've eaten for community, for the experience of a meal. They've eaten to commune, not just with other people, but with nature. Because we do, through eating, connect to the natural world. People have eaten for identity, to express their own identity. We are the people who eat this, we are the people who don't eat that. Very important definer of who you are. And we eat for spiritual reasons. We eat symbolic food to express a spiritual relationship. So these are all equally legitimate reasons to eat, other than health. But for some reason, we have reduced it down to this one thing. Now, nutritionism, to some extent, has been a part of American culture for a surprisingly long time. I went into this thinking this is a recent situation.